Good evening, everyone. Time now is 5:22. If you could stand for our pledge and our invocation. Put Commissioner Hurley on the spot if he leads the invocation tonight.
Dear Lord, we're very thankful once again to be able to come into another commission meeting where we're putting the works, the families, the employees of our great community at task. We ask for your guidance in our decisions. We ask for your wisdom in our makings of what we come up with, and we ask for joint unity in all the things that we do. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our chairperson tonight is running a little late, so we'll continue with the meeting. First is approve our minutes. Is the regular meeting held February 12, 2018.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Commissioner Connor?
Yeah.
Chairperson Pro Tem Christian?
Yes.
Whew.
We do have one resolution. It's 3A. Would someone like to introduce it, please?
I'll introduce it.
Actually, for technical purposes, we need to amend the agenda to add the resolution, if we can do that.
Okay.
I move to amend the agenda to add the resolution we need to discuss.
Second.
Been properly moved and second to amend the agenda. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Commissioner Connor?
Yeah.
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Chairperson Pro Tem Christian?
Yes. And our chairperson is here, so I'll turn it over to him. And we do have a motion on the floor to approve the resolution, Mr. Chair.
Did we? No, we didn't. No, we didn't get that far.
Okay.
You didn't.
I move to approve the. Oh, we had to read it first. I introduced and asked to be read by title.
Yes.
So, are we on 3A or 3B?
Yes, 3A.
3A, okay.
We had to add it to the agenda.
Resolution of the Carver Heights, Montclair Area Community Redevelopment Agency authorizing the chairman to approve additional funding allocation and approval of final kitchen build-out for the West Leesburg Neighborhood Resource Center and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Discussion?
If I could just give you a brief staff report on where we're at on this. So essentially the resolution does what the agenda transmittal says. And this afternoon it was determined that we needed a resolution so that we could execute the amendment to the contract with Evergreen Construction. Essentially what staff is asking is we're asking you to increase the CRA Resource Center project from $2.297 million to $2.47 million. That's an increase of $180,000. Here's the situation. Back in September, the CRA board authorized staff to move forward with final design on the kitchen concept. We completed final design, and I guess fortunately or unfortunately, our number was wrong. We had always thought on a staff level that a commercial kitchen build-out was going to be in the neighborhood of about $500,000. It turns out that is the case. The commercial kitchen's about $540,000. Here's how we got our wires crossed. Essentially, we didn't marry the kitchen equipment component and the build-out component together. So you put those two numbers together, that's where you get your costs. So that's the bad news. The good news is that because of other aspects in the project, we're about $360,000 under budget. So the kitchen build-out portion of this requires an action of $180,000. So essentially, I'm asking the board to increase the budget by $180,000, and then executing the contract in the amount of $360 leaves a difference of about $180 to purchase the equipment, which we can do under our administrative authorities. So to do the action, we need to come up with $180,000. In the CRA fund, I don't think that's a significant number. My Transmittal provided about 4 ways to go and do the project, and I'm asking again for a little bit of administrative leniency so that we can determine the best way. In your second page on the transmittal letter, I provided 4 ways that the project can be funded. The worst case scenario would be just to increase the loan amount that we had talked about. We had budgeted a loan in the amount of $1.05 million, so you could increase that by the $180,000. And depending on how we finance that, an internal note will certainly have that finance that amount for the amount that we budgeted the debt payment for. So it's really not a financial hit to the fund. 2 middle ways were using some of the monies that we hadn't paid in the operations budget in the CRA to cover our costs, and then mix that with an increase in the loan amount. And then the 4th way would be Ken is in the process of trying to acquire 2 additional grants, and so grant funding has the potential to cover the overage. So my recommendation is to go ahead and approve this. If we can swing back and cover it with grant monies, we'll bring the grant to you. If not, we'll be back to do the bank note at one of these differing levels. So essentially the $180,000 is not a big burden for this fund, and the project can be completed, which is the most important thing, and then stay within the parameters of the CRA fund. So our recommendation is to approve the project budget modification and then execute the resolution which authorizes the chairman of the CRA board to enter into the contract with Evergreen.
So are we on the, we're still good with the college on the kitchen? With the
Your item actually at the commission meeting is the lease with Lake Tech to start their programming. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to complete this as well, is because it's going to take about 120 days to complete the kitchen, and Lake Tech is ready to start their first classes in August.
Any comments from the commission?
So we're going to go another $180,000 into this kitchen.
We're going to, well, the kitchen, we're going to go another 180 over the budget.
We're going.
But you said we had saved some money, so
hard money is $180
over what
actual,
we had already budgeted for.
Right, and actual cost for the kitchen is $540.
Yeah. But on the real side, we save money to build the building, and that's great. That doesn't make an excuse to go spend it right away on another kitchen, you know. But yes, we save money. We're under budget, and so now you got extra money that you can say, well, let's go ahead and go spend it on the kitchen. That's not always the wisest decision, just to say, well, I save money, so I'll go spend it right now. So, no.
Well, I think part of my deal is, you know, the last meeting we had, there was a lot said about Susan Street, working on sidewalks, lighting, things like that. And now if we're going to add another $180,000 to the CRA and tap it out even more, then, you know.
From that perspective, when we committed to this project, you almost tapped out the CRA, the Carver Heights CRA, because we did the bond note with it, and then we've got the operational expenses. So from that CRA parameter, you're not affecting projects. When we chose to do this project, we said
tap that.
But we'd have $360,000 left over from that budget if we didn't do it, plus the kitchen money.
You would have $360,000
plus the $185,000 that we're spending on the kitchen anyway. So you'd actually have about $545,000.
Well,
I don't think you would.
Well, I guess for me, I think going to community meetings, hearing what the community's wishes were, I think this is one of the major projects that the community within the CRA wanted to do. So to say, let's not do the kitchen, I think it's a disservice to the people who kind of been meeting and strategizing and saying this is what we think is best for our community. And let's not forget that our staff has also, you know, we kind of also said, staff go out and try to get grant funding, and we see USDA funding applications in progress. We know the county's already getting us $200,000 towards the kitchen, towards this project. So I don't know if that money is part of your savings, Al. So we don't do the kitchen. Do we give the county the $200,000 back and say?
No, that's why I was going to come back to your question. You don't have 540. And roughly, this is what would happen. If you didn't finish the project, you'd have the unfinished kitchen, and you'd be about $360,000 under budget. So then the next step would be is instead of doing a note for $1.05 million, you would do the note for $1.05 million less $360. So now, rough figures, you're doing a note for about $700,000. So so cash out, you're the same. So now it's really operational numbers. So at operational numbers, instead of having a debt payment of about 90, you're probably surfing around a debt payment of say around 70,000. So you've got $20,000 cash in your pocket plus the 180 that we're not shifting around. So you probably maybe have about 200 because the savings from the building goes towards reduction of the debt. So it's not hard cash. That's why jumping, so shifting around that note from, say, 750 to the 1.2, you're talking a few $1,000s, which we've already got weaved into the debt payment. That's why structurally it works.
And I'm just saying, let's just be real about the fact that just because you save money doesn't, you're still talking about a $540,000 kitchen, and just because you say 360 over there, it doesn't change. It's still a $540,000 kitchen.
Which I'm fine with 540. I think we should have did it initially when we had the cafe in the kitchen. We voted to do the cafe. We came back, so let's not do the cafe. Let's do them all in one. So that was $180,000 that we didn't do the cafe. That we were going to do just one kitchen. And to me, it's kind of like we've been talking this project for a very long time. We're almost at a complete state, except for the kitchen. And then we get to a point here where we said, let's go get Lake Tech. We got Lake Tech. They signed a lease. We got ready to get a program that's going to be started in August, and we're kind of waffling. And I would just hope that the CRA would really honor some of the neighborhood initiatives to get this project and see it to completion. I don't see the spending $360,000. I think that we complete the kitchen because it's kind of embarrassing to walk into the building and you got the right side is beautiful and the left side you got an empty shell. And we're saying, we made a commitment to do this facility, and the kitchen aspect is probably for me one of the most important parts because I think it does do what we talk about, job creation, educate people to give them some trainability skills within that neighborhood. So to me, the kitchen is probably one of the most important parts of the entire building.
And that's what you said. I think the last part was the most important part. Is that my hope is we do the kitchen, that we're going to do something to help people learn some skills, and I would have liked to even see that we as a city have a bigger idea of taking in with restaurants and doing, we've got still got Venetian Gardens, but if we had some program where you're training chefs and you give them an opportunity to run little restaurants in the city and kind of an incubator type system, but we haven't gone that direction. I think we could even do more with it potentially by have a bigger picture there. But I just wanted to bring up I mean the real cost of it, and I hope that we are able to change to create some training and jobs, and I think jobs are coming, and so people will be better prepared for them. So.
Yeah, so I was initially opposed to the kitchen because we didn't have someone to run it, but with Lake Tap coming in, that's the whole reason I'm getting behind it is we have someone who knows what they're doing. They're gonna have students there, and I think, like both of you said, it gets back to getting people jobs, and those are jobs that are out there that we know people can't fill. We can train them, and I think that would be a big benefit to the community.
I'll save it for later, but I'm going to bring up something later that just remember we're spending all this money. I think we need to look on the other side of where we got to plug some holes other places too. So.
Okay. Any more comments about this item? Any comments from the public? Roll call.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Commissioner Connor?
Yeah, I want to know, will it be will you come back for another change in the price or not?
This should be it. This number should be it, and we're done and get the building finished.
Okay. I hope the commissioner folks won't pass it.
Commissioner Bowen?
Yes.
Chairperson Roebuck?
Yes. That was the only resolution, right? Yes. Okay, nothing else added. All right, roll call.
Commissioner Bowen?
Are we expecting a dedication or date on this?
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Most of the items for the other portion are just about ready to go. We're probably looking at first part of April to mid-April for the official ribbon breaking. Based on the action tonight, we'll go ahead and we'll start construction on the kitchen, the kitchen finish out. That'll be about 120 days. So that activity can go on while we do the ribbon cutting, and we can get moved into the facility while this is going on. So first part of April, mid-April, we'll have the ribbon cutting, and then we'll be ready to go.
That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Christian?
I'm excited and thankful for the CRA Board and Commission for moving this project forward.
Commissioner Hurley?
Nothing.
Commissioner Connor?
Yeah.
Chairperson Roebuck?
Nothing
I
tonight.
don't know if you want to catch Commissioner Dennison.
Oh,
I know
Commissioner
she's
Dennison,
on
I'm
by phone. She
sorry.
can't vote,
Yeah.
but she can participate.
I'm sorry.
Did you have anything to add?
Thank you very much. I'm glad we're moving ahead with this, and hopefully when we have this ribbon cutting, we're gonna really celebrate. So thank you.
Okay, CRA meeting's adjourned. Take about a 2-minute break and then roll into our regular commission meeting. Back.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with our commission meeting here. We've already done the invocation and the pledge at our CRA, so we're just going to start right up with the agenda here. To start with, we have a proclamation about Water Month, and I was just informed. I always wondered why we read these out loud because nobody likes to listen to them, but apparently it enables them to get a grant, so you have to listen to me read this thing. So the proclamation, whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature, and whereas the state of Florida water management districts and the city of Leesburg are working together to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation, and whereas the city of Leesburg and state of Florida have designated April, typically a dry month when water demands are most acute, Florida's Water Conservation Month to educate citizens about how they can help save Florida's precious water resources, and whereas the city of Leesburg has always encouraged and supported water conservation through various educational programs and special events, and whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference when it comes to conserving water and can help by saving water and thus promote a healthy economy and community. Now, therefore, I, H.D. Roebuck III, Mayor of the City of Leesburg, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2018 as Water Conservation Month and call upon each citizen and business to help protect our precious resource by practicing water-saving measures and becoming more aware of the need to save water. So, great. Now we have a presentation from the Leesburg Police Department about their accreditation. Is that correct, Chief?
Get the officers from the police department come up, please. Yes. If the commission wouldn't mind, I'll have the officers face the crowd,
Yes,
so it's
that'd be
less
great.
awkward for everybody.
Gotta intimidate us, man. We already passed the budget.
Chief Parker, can we have you come up, please? Good evening, Commission. Thank you for having me. Thank you, folks, for having me and sitting here listening to this. Not that they had a choice because they squeezed in at the last minute. Up here, please. My name is Rob Hicks. I'm your Chief of Police for the Leesburg Police Department. We went through a pretty spectacular process over the last few years. I wanted to explain a little bit about it, what it means, and why it's important. I just want to read a couple of excerpts to keep it brief. So what accreditation is, it's an accreditation program has long been recognized as a means of maintaining the highest standards of professionalism. Accreditation is a certificate by an independent reviewing authority that an entity has met specific requirements and prescribed standards. Schools, universities, and hospitals are some of the most well-known organizations that are required to maintain accreditation. Law enforcement agencies in Florida can attain accreditation status through the Commission of Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation, and that's what we did. So it's a process when you initiate it. Mr. Minter was kind enough to let me spearhead this accreditation process. Leesburg Police Department has not been accredited to this point. When I took over as chief, I thought it was a pretty important thing to do, and Mr. Minter agreed with me, so we endeavored on that process. So It takes 3 years. They give you 3 years to go through that accreditation process. We were able to do it just in over a year and a half. With the extremely diligent work of Lieutenant Gary Barrett, who is holding our certificate, who's our accreditation manager. There were 141 mandatory standards that had to be met, and we got a 100% rating. You need an 80% to get accredited. We were 100% in the 141 mandatory. There were 48 other non-mandatory standards, and we were 98% in that. I think we had one piece of paper missing in a recruiting policy that was actually there. We just didn't have it there for the evaluation. So I thought that was extremely important. So the men and women of Leesburg Police Department worked extremely hard in order to get through this process. It's not something that can be done easily. They come in, they interview all of your people, they go through your facilities, so everything you have has to meet industry standard for law enforcement agencies throughout the country and in the state of Florida. And so we met that above and beyond. We went a couple weeks ago to St. Augustine to get presented this in front of the entire commission, which is a 17-person body. I was extremely pleased to hear the kind words and remarks that the assessment team made about the Leesburg Police Department. All of the work was done throughout those 18 months that we did, but when they came for the final assessment for a few days where they really dig in, they look for things, and you kind of let go and they interview your staff and they're going to say what they're going to say. They were extremely pleased, and they found the men and women of the Leesburg Police Department as professional as I do. And I just wanted to read the last little excerpt that was written by Vicki Cutliff. She's a retired police chief in Florida. She has over 35 years in law enforcement. This is what she does now, goes around to do crediting assessments. She's never written this in her findings for a police department, and I really take pride in this. It says the Leesburg Police Department is a family made up of exceptional and dedicated personnel who enjoy their profession. The Leesburg Police Department is a professional law enforcement agency which exceeds the goals and standards set forth by the Commission. So I thought that was an excellent thing for somebody to say, and I was proud to have it. And I want to thank the men and women of the Leesburg Police Department, including our recently retired Deputy Chief Parker, who was here when we began and embarked on this process, and he was instrumental in that as well. Thank you. Last but not least, before you guys go home, I want everyone to thank the Commission for allowing us to move through this process. We couldn't have done it without you guys, and we appreciate the support of the Commission as always.
Amen. Congratulations. Congratulations, sir. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Good to see you for all your congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations, sir. Retirement. You made it. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I can just point out that the police chief to hear this. So, Chief Hicks, I just want to point out that I appreciate, and I'm sure Commissioner Roba, our mayor, does as well, that you being a Miami grad, that you picked the garnet and gold for your framing your.
I'm a big fan, and I had no choice in that. We will be getting it reframed.
Okay. All right. Now we have a presentation by our auditing firm. Someone here.
Good evening. Jim Williams, Finance Director. And this is our accreditation project here. So I'd like to introduce Joel Knopp from Moore Stevens Lovelace Auditors. And I want to thank Carl Plesner and his staff for doing a great job on the audit. And here's Joel.
Well, good evening, Mayor Roebuck and members of the Commission. It is a pleasure to be here and present the audit for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2017 for the City of Leesburg. And I have a short PowerPoint slide I'll go through. The first item, if you want to flip to, I believe, the next slide there, yes, the required communications. This is just a list of some of the topics covered under the required communications letter that was distributed as part of our financial report. This is just goes through required communications that are required by our standards to communicate to those charged with governance. The main thing I just want to point out from that is that we encounter no significant difficulties in dealing with management. We got full cooperation. We received a representation letter from management as well, that they provided us with all the information we needed for our audit. And that we had no disagreements with them throughout the audit as well. So from there, I'll turn to our reports, which are really the objective of our audit is to issue opinions on the financial statements. So if you want to, yes. So the first report I want to refer you to is our independent auditor's report on the financial statements themselves. Pleased to report we had an unmodified opinion, which means that the financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and that the numbers presented in it can be relied upon. Hold on, go back one more. There we go. The second report listed on this is in the compliance section of the document, and this goes through our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters. And pleased to report there were no internal control findings related to financial reporting and no compliance findings. The next report is our report on compliance for each major federal program and internal control over compliance related to that federal grant. And in this case, it was a community development block grant that was audited as a major grant for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2017. And again, no internal control findings and no compliance findings related to that grant. The next report is the Independent Accountants Report, and this relates to the Florida Statute 218.415, which relates to the city's investment compliance, compliance with Florida statute related to the investment policy, and I'm pleased to report no compliance findings in that area. And then the second report is the required management letter that's required by the Auditor General. That covers a variety of topics, including the city's financial condition, as well as financial management and immaterial compliance matters. And again, no management letter comments, so a clean report for the city. All right, the next slide I'll go through is just a brief summary of some of the financial highlights. This first slide looks at the full accrual statements of the city. So this is considering all the long-term assets, which are the capital assets, the infrastructure of the city, as well as taking into account the long-term liabilities for the city, all the long-term debt, including net pension liability. And the number I'll focus on is really the top line, the current ratio. That's shows that's looking at current assets over current liabilities of the city, and you want that to be as large a number as possible. That is a very good liquidity ratio for the city. So from a cash standpoint, those are very good ratios to have. And then also just looking at the unrestricted net position numbers for both the governmental activities and business type activities. So we're both positive numbers. The business type in particular grew from 52.9 million to 54.5 million, and there's a positive change in that position for both governmental and business type. This next slide looks at the general fund specifically as the primary operating fund of the city, and the main number I want to point out on this slide is the unassigned fund balance, which was 10.9 million. That was an increase over 2016 of $1 million. And as a percentage of total expenditures and transfers out, that's a very healthy 43.6%. So that's a very healthy figure for the general fund. And again, you'll see that positive net change in fund balance of $1 million. This next slide just shows a comparison to how the general fund operated in comparison to budget. You can see in the budget column there's actually a $2 million spend down in fund balance that was budgeted. And if you look at actual results, the revenues were up $0.9 million over budget, and expenditures were below budget by $2.1 million. So there was a positive result of $3 million when you compare actual to the budget. And that covers primarily the highlights I had for the financials. I did want to mention to the Commission a new standard that's coming into effect for fiscal year 18. And similar to the net pension liability, which came into effect a few years ago, this is going to require the reporting of the full liability for the other post-employment benefits of the city, which currently the city reports approximately half of that liability on the statements. This will, obviously bring in a larger number on the liability side of the balance sheet. This will impact the full accrual financial statements for the city, but the impact, fortunately, it won't impact the general fund. So from an annual operating budget standpoint, you will be fine as it relates to this standard, but it will make that unrestricted net position for the full accrual statements potentially a negative number. So that's just something to keep in mind as we look into next year. But that was really all I had to present. I do want to extend my appreciation to Jim Williams and Carl Plessner and the team they have, and the fine job they did in providing us with the information we needed and preparing the comprehensive annual financial report as well. So any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Questions from the public? Okay, well, we appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so now we will move into our consent agenda. Routine items are placed on the consent agenda to expedite the meeting. If the commission staff wish to discuss any item, procedure is as follows. 1, pull the item from the consent agenda. 2, vote on remaining items with 1 roll call vote. 3, discuss each pulled item and vote by roll call. Any items need to be pulled?
None for me.
Okay, any discussion with the public? Roll call?
Motion.
Make a motion to approve all consent agenda, Mr. Mayor.
There you go.
Second.
Okay. So now do we have any discussion? Okay, roll call?
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Mayor Robuck?
Yes. Okay, now on to public hearings and non-routine items. We have 5A, if someone would like to introduce.
I'll introduce it, has to be read by title only.
An ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, providing a waiver of collection on city impact fees, setting forth the legislative findings for the purpose of providing an economic incentive to occupy and utilize existing vacant structures, limiting the waiver of impact fees under this ordinance to new businesses moving into existing vacant structures and redevelopment of existing structures, providing for a waiver of impact fees in the Central Business District, requiring payment of impact fees suspended by this ordinance if a certificate of occupancy or business tax receipt for the project or business is not issued within 12 months of issuance of a building permit for the project, providing a savings clause and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any comments? Comments from the public? Roll call.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Mayor Robuck?
Yes. On to 5B. Someone would like to introduce?
I'll introduce SB read by title only, please.
An ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, creating Article 16, grants of the City of Leesburg Code of Ordinances, establishing Section 7-282, Major Employment Center Grant Program, expressing the purpose of and eligibility for the program, creating an application, procedures, and reimbursement process, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing a savings clause, and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Discussion? I had 2 items that I think I wanted to discuss to see the Commission's feeling on making some amendments. One is the current way it's written, it does not allow them to start construction until the grant has been approved. There is some concern specifically with the mall that their permits will be issued before they'd be able to get this actually to the commission, and they don't want this to hold it up. Obviously, if we didn't like the improvements, we could still, vote no on the grant. So I don't know if about the idea of maybe putting in a 30-day window or something where it wouldn't prohibit them from applying, wouldn't award it.
You mean from when that they can go ahead and pull their permits
and start
and then apply after the fact?
Yeah, right. You know.
I mean, if it's at their own.
It's at their own risk, but
yeah.
the way it's written now, it says that once they start, they could not come and apply.
Is there a reason why that wouldn't work out, or at all? Or is it?
No.
So.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I guess that's the thing, is that there's always a chance we may not get 3 votes to say, or
right.
to say, hey, that was a good idea.
I know a lot of state grants do that. You know, whenever you apply, you can't start the work until that. But I think this is kind of different because we're local and we're real close by what's going on. So.
Right. Okay, so I guess the amendment it's in G. Oh, is it H1? No, that's when you receive. It's G, then H, or there must be a number there. G4H says application must be reviewed before facade, sign, or landscaping construction work begins. Grants will not be awarded to improvement projects that are completed prior to grant application. So
we need to amend H or just take H out for every.
Well, what was being discussed previously was allowing them to pull permits or commence, but what the mayor read said that they would not be given a grant for a project that's completed, which is a different issue.
But the first sentence says that it has to be reviewed before they start work. So it says 2 different things. I think that if we struck the first sentence, we would be okay.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And then that would, by leaving the completed, that would prevent someone from coming and trying to apply for something they did like 2 years ago.
Okay.
I mean, we deny it anyways, but.
Well, I mean, we strike the first sentence on H.
And
that's GH.
It's yes.
Second.
Okay, do we get a second?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Discussion from the public? Roll call on the amendment?
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Mayor Roebuck?
Yes. And the other thing that was brought up, and I think there's some room here as well, is on these larger ones, specifically the mall, but it could apply to anyone, of course, in the future, is they would like to be able to, at 50% kind of completion, come to us and request a draw of some amount. It would be up to us whether we decided to issue it or not. The way it's written right now is the entire project has to be done before any grant funds are awarded. And my thinking is that on a large project where we're not matching dollar for dollar, it's actually way less because the project's bigger than the grant. That could be appropriate.
So hypothetically, if they're doing $1 million project, they come to the city and say, hey, we got $500,000 of it done. Can you guys award us $100,000?
Yeah, and we could vote yes or no.
They can, so it's just they can ask.
They can ask for, basically they can ask for a draw.
Just decide then.
Fred, legally, we're
Yeah, that would be fine.
fine with it.
So we need to make a motion to amend.
Yeah, we need to make a motion to have, I probably need to take out the reimbursement and say reimbursement, or then add a subparagraph that says, you know, upon application, the applicant may request a partial payment needing approval by the city commission.
Yeah, of no more than some percentage.
50%?
No more than 50%,
So you're
yeah.
gonna make it 2 draws?
I think one draw. Yeah, and then a final. Yeah,
2.
Right. Yep.
Okay, so if you just let us do the wording on that, we'll put it in the appropriate portion of the contract,
So you got some better
or
words.
program. We'll come up with something to share with the commission.
Okay.
So it'll basically read like it reads, and then there'll be a subparagraph that will allow them to apply for.
Do we need a motion for that?
think the motion's on the floor, I think.
But we need a motion to amend it.
The motion to amend as we've described.
As described, yeah.
So move.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the amendment? Discussion on the amendment from the public? Roll call.
Commissioner Bowen?
Yes.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Mayor Roebuck?
Yes. Any discussion on the actual full motion from the commission or from the public? Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowen?
Yes.
Mayor Roebuck?
Yes. Okay, so now we're on to 5C, which is an update on the state of the Morris House, which so I know everyone here's been notified, and some people in the audience have, but maybe not everyone. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah,
now
let me
and
give
a
you.
brief
I'll give
update?
you a quick update, and I'll start with the good news and then work backwards. Really, the good news today is we had a meeting with Brown & Brown. They visited Jim Williams. Jim Williams is chief of our insurance and insurance claims and the like. In any case, they did inform Jim today, unofficially, that the insurance would pay for a rebuild. Initially, our thinking was that we would be capped, and we were thinking a rebuild cost was going to be in the neighborhood of $1.5 to $2 million, and we were capped at the insured value. And essentially, as Brown & Brown has gone through their process, they informed us today that no, we would be eligible for a rebuild. Now, the hitch in that giddy up is going to be that the rebuild's going to have to be approved by them. They're going to estimate a value of what the rebuild is, and then that would be the payout. So if they believe a rebuild value is $1.3 million, then our rebuild's going to have to capture the ambiance of the house at $1.3 million. If their number is to recapture the ambiance of the house is $2 million, then that's going to be the payout. So that, I think that's good news. I think that would be the direction that the commission would want to move in. Now, let me do caution: a rebuild is not refurbish. So as we move forward, refurbish would be try to build the house in its historical context. Now, it can look like a historical house and not be historical, and that would be a rebuild. But a refurbish would be in the historical context. Historical context would be, for example, replaster all the walls. You know, all the plaster in the walls, it's the old lapboard plaster, all that would have to come down. And then you put back up the historic 12 by 12 trusses with wood pegs. Rebuild the windows with the single plated wavy glass, historical. That would be rebuilding it to its historic context. Insurance won't pay for that, but they will pay for the rebuild, which would be get it up to code, new electrical wiring, HVC, rebuild it as it looks today, and that would be paid for by the insurance company. Where we're at on that is still two things. One, the Brown & Brown is still closing out their final audit and adjustment numbers. We hope to have this official from Brown & Brown in the next couple of days. And then two, we are still also having a structural engineer go out to review the house. That structural engineer will be here Wednesday, and I think that's important from a couple standpoints too. In light of today's news, is to make sure that insurance value and that structural engineer's values are the same. And while we haven't had an official report back yet from Brown & Brown, the Brown & Brown adjusters were concerned about structural integrity issues. And so I think it's important for us that we have two structural engineers through the insurance and one of our own who's an independent, making sure everything is cross-checking and referencing and correct. So my advice to the commission today is to kind of sit tight, wait to see where Brown & Brown goes to, but I think you could probably rebuild that facility. My hope is for a net revenue neutral number for the city, other than where insurance may go. Leading up till today, the steps that we had basically set this up to provide the commission with a few steps and a decision-making matrix on how to move forward with the house. That included some of the updates tonight. We've been with the insurance company waiting on the final numbers. We brought in a structural engineer. We've been in contact with folks from the Historical Society to make sure that things get reclaimed. We reset up the Chamber of Commerce and the incubator building, so we've been moving forward in that fashion. So today, I think that the news is, and as well, the fifth wheel in that is to just bring to attention the code of the city for the commission, which is pretty much any decision we do, the commission I kind of would liken as the owners of the facility. Before an owner of a facility would make a decision on how they move forward, you would have a conversation. And so in our case, we're the owners of a public facility, and we need to have a public conversation. But then, pursuant to the code, whatever decision the commission would come up with would then have to go before the Historical Preservation Board. There's a couple of 3 sections, I put them in the packet, that references out the process. So any historical building in the historic district of the city of Leesburg has to go before the Preservation Board, whether you remodel it, change it, demo it, upgrade it, or whatever, because I would say to you that the intent of the code is to preserve the historic buildings. So moving forward, my recommendation to the commission is to see where Brown & Brown goes with the rebuild fund, see where that goes, come back, make a determination on moving forward, and then if it indeed is the remodel, then we would need to present that case to the Historic Preservation Board to make sure that we follow the code. My guess would be that we're probably still a couple of weeks out on that final determination.
So my suggestion is that there's a lot of people here that came, I think, about the house, so we would allow for public comment, but I don't think we're to where we can make a decision till we have the number from the insurance and the engineer's report, unless you guys think otherwise. So I think we just listen to public comment, and then once we get affirmation, we have another discussion about what we can do.
So insurance isn't going to do anything until we meet again and talk again about it? Or?
No, insurance is going to give us the determination on what they think the value of the rebuild is. And then I think we need to cross-check that, and then I think we need to bring that information to you. So insurance, I think, will establish what the rebuild parameters are and what they will pay out for it. Then I think we cross-check that with our structural engineers, and if all the numbers line up, then I think you're in line for a rebuild.
And that's what I'd say. If they came and said, we'll give you $500,000, that'd be a different conversation than if they said, we'll give you $2 million, and we don't know what that number is.
Well, and I think that's going to go either way. They're going to come back and they're going to say, well, we think you can basically rebuild and make it look like what you had there, and that's going to cost $500,000. And then they're going to pay us out $500,000. If they think that number's $2 million, then that payout's going to be $2 million. So where they're at is in the process of determining what kind of structural damage there, what they think the estimate is to get it rebuilt, and then they're going to present that case to us. I think we are incumbent then to make sure that our insurance companies are giving us a real number, and we're doing that with the structural. So my hope is that you're going to get a good estimate on a rebuild from the insurance company that's going to pay out what we think it's going to cost to really fix it, and then insurance hopefully covers a rebuild.
What are you classifying as a rebuild?
A rebuild, roughly.
Bulldozing?
No.
Or are you talking about just going in and gutting it out and repairing?
It could be any of that. It could be I mean, the insurance company could come back and say this place is totally lost. It all needs to be demoed, and then we can rebuild.
And the structural engineer, we need his report too.
We need his too. Right. So that would be like a total rebuild, and insurance would pay for that. Insurance will pay for contents up to a certain amount. Insurance will pay, what was the number, up to $250 for demolition, and then they would pay for a rebuild. So worst case scenario would be the building is totally destroyed. It needs to be demolished, and then we rebuild it, and then they would pay for that. Or a lower tier scenario would be the back third of the building needs to be removed. The front third or 2/3 is structurally okay, but we got to go in there and we got to gut stuff out. We got to rewire. We got to put HVC in. We got to put some public safety issues in there, like not sprinkler systems, but fire alarms, that type of thing. And then that payout is going to be X. So I don't have the answer to your question. We're waiting on Brown & Brown's opinion on that.
Does the ordinances come into effect with a historic building that once you do a certain percentage of repairs or improvements, that you have to go through the entire building and bring everything up? Does it apply to historic houses?
Yes, but there is some wiggle room.
I think our historic preservation code applies to the exterior of the building, not anything to the interior.
Yes.
That as to the city. The city code.
Yes, but I took your question as how does it stay on the historic register's list, and how does that affect a rebuild in ADA, not our code.
That's another thing we don't know yet.
This is probably premature, but there has been some people in the community that have already started talking about, as the Morris house is renovated, that there's maybe a reuse of it. A bed and breakfast or a restaurant or something, to seek if there's possibly an RFP to have a private company come in and to work with, to lease the building or do some concept there. And so I know, I just mention it, that if that's a possibility, an idea, that even a private company that gets involved with it may at some point, if we went that route, maybe there would be some input into how that work would be done on the interior there, particularly, if that was something the commission would want to consider doing.
I mean, I'm kind of open at this point. I mean, I just don't know enough to make any kind of.
Yeah, I'm open to anything, but I want to know more.
But yeah, if we start heading down that road, the insurance company's saying that we're going to do this, and so you have to build walls back this way or that way. I mean, if we've got an option at this point, there's going to be some gutting going on. That if it's an opportunity to work with a partner in that, to come in and do something that provides an additional amenity for downtown, and also maybe make some revenue for the city as well.
I guess that was my question to you about the insurance company. How involved were they going to be after they make a recommendation and write you a check? Are they going to be that involved as
I don't know the answer to that question. My assumption is once the rebuild is done, and once they saw that value has gone back into the rebuild, how you use the facility, whether it's a bridal place or the chamber's office or the Historical Society Museum or a bread and breakfast, I don't think they're not gonna dictate use to us. They're just gonna ensure that their insurance proceeds went to rebuild the facility that was destroyed by fire appropriately.
And do you have to rebuild in order to receive the funds?
No, I think there could be an option there where you demo it and take the proceeds.
But there's if our cost to repair matches with the insurance company saying this is what we think it's going to cost to repair it, then that's going to be, the dollars would be there to repair it. But where the problem's going to be is if their number is just too low for what we really know it's going to cost.
Well, and that's where a private company could come in potentially as part of that deal.
Make up that difference.
Pick up the difference.
And maybe we do it anyway. That's so it's a good time to talk about the Moat Morris house. If not only to rebuild it, but to repurpose it and get more use out of it.
Well, I definitely think that if whatever we're going to do, I mean, for me to get on board, it's going to have to be. I mean, it's not going to be something that's on the historic record anymore. It's not going to be the original house. It's going to be a look-alike replica, at best. And I just think if we're going to start getting into millions of dollars, we might really need to focus on what are we going to get out of it besides. I'll just leave it at that right now.
Okay. So do we have any comments from the public? Okay.
Well, this is very good news. I think if all this works out, it's probably the best we can hope for. And Commissioner Hurley, it's our history, even if it is rebuilt. It's our history, and it's in the core of the city. And we need to protect that core. Were any of you around when we redid City Hall? City Hall was about half, you were, Fred. Sure. City Hall was about half this size, but it looked just like this. We completely remodeled it, new windows, air conditioning, you know, everything. It just was almost a new building. And it stayed in the core of the city. The library, and this is, you know, I worked hard on getting that done, and the library's in the core of the city. We need to protect the core of the city because this is Leesburg's heritage, everything. We're surrounded by, you know, the onslaught of the villages and the things that are coming, and we just need to protect the core. And even if it's a replica, people will donate things so we can make the inside probably look. I mean, you know, I don't know about these other uses. I hadn't even thought about that, but you know, it's good. It's good news as far as I'm concerned. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'm Gloria Ann Foss. And now I don't know if many of you are aware, but most of the buildings, except for where Beacon is, were built before 1926. Now, how many of you knew that? But I don't feel that changing the emphasis on the building leaves the building as a property of the city. I would like to see it remain a property of the city. I would like to see us encourage people to use it for weddings, for parties and things. It was not kept in the best condition when they were renting it, when you were renting it. And I would notice people come in and look around, and it just wasn't as clean as it should have been kept. And I've been down there 15 years. So I just wanted to say a few words this time. Next time it'll be more.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm John O'Kelly with the Leesburg Historic Preservation Board. We had a preliminary meeting about a week and a half ago regarding the house. Of course, it is too early to make any decisions for you guys to push forward. So I think the key is getting these engineer reports, the structural engineer reports. What I'd like to encourage the city to do at this point, even though we don't know what's going to happen for sure, if we can perhaps put some tarps over the structure. When it rains, it's going to further deteriorate. Some of the water damage is pretty well dried out now. I have been in the building, and I certainly do see a potential for a significant part of that building that could be saved. So, but for the short haul, if we could maybe have Public Works consider doing something to protect the building, that'd be great. Thank you.
It's a great idea. You can look at it and just make sure they do it safely.
Good evening, everybody. Rick Rojas, RJ Builders. Of course, you know, growing up here in Leesburg, have seen and been part of this history of the Morris House, the relocation of it. It is, you know, you're seeing an overwhelming response to the fire that took place there with regards to saving the home and maintaining the historical preservation. I mean, Mr. Minner, you stated that the insurance company would allow you to rebuild but not renovate. And once you rebuild, it just declassifies the home, correct?
Probably already declassified based on our initial conversations with the National Register, but they haven't said 100%. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
What would this? I mean, what would constitute declassifying at this point? Because it caught fire.
Yeah. They said too much has been destroyed already.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because what we were thinking is, I mean, if it could be saved somehow and maintained, if it's based on a certain percentage of the damage to the home.
Yeah, if I can, look, I'll clarify on that. We had a preliminary conversation with the historical registrar about the significance of the house and a little bit about how that applies to code. Essentially, as far as the house being on the National Historic Register, the amount of the fire has in the historical register's opinion has classified it as not a historic structure anymore. And even if you did a refurbishment of the home, the historical register would consider the building not historical anymore because it wasn't, you know, it wasn't stuccoed and plastered in 1820. It was stuccoed and plastered now, and therefore it's not historical. So even if you put back and built it with wood pegs in 2012, not historical anymore because of the fire. As the strictest of the National Historic Register. The National Historic Register went on to say that there's probably about 500 structures in Florida that have been through some type of fire or remodeling or demolition that are still on the list. And it's really their job to make sure that everybody's authentic with their registration, but their position was we don't have the staff, don't have the budget to make sure everybody's on there. So I think that the honest answer is, yeah, it's probably not historic anymore, even if we rebuild it or remodel it. Whether that forces us to take down the plate on the front doors, probably up to us. I would suggest we probably don't take it down. But I think the more important thing that we've learned through this process is that it's probably really going to be, and I don't want to put Jay in a spot, but I think our building official does have the professional opinion that there's some things that we can do in and out of the code because of its use that won't force us to do things like build an elevator. Now, there'll be some life safety things that the building official will want to put in there, like fire sprinkler, or not, I don't know about sprinklers, but I know we're going to have to do fire alarms, we're going to have to do new electric, we're going to have to do some new HVC. Those things obviously aren't going to be historical, but because of its use, because of its historic context, I think Jay feels comfortable in getting the building so it's safe without having to spend a boatload of money on elevators and these type of things. So that's a good thing. So at the end of the day, will it be purely authentic? Probably not. But will it be a pretty good replica and at least a local memorial? I think we can get there, and I'm hopeful we can get there for a number that's revenue neutral for the city.
Okay. Yeah, because that answers the question. Because you know, and you brought up a good point that I was going to mention is a lot of these historical buildings from way back years, centuries back. I mean, they have been damaged, whether it be a hurricane or fire or whatever, and they've still maintained their registry. And that's what I'm trying to say. You know, if we could get in there with the least intrusive method, of course, all the electric, you know, has to be updated. There's no doubt, and it can be done in a method of least intrusion, whether you just cut little strips and put conduit in there, or
I think based on the conversation there with the National Historic Register at that level of what they really deem historic, I think if they had the Historic Register police go out, that list would be a whole lot smaller than what it is. But
Okay.
I mean, that's working on a level that's.
So you're saying that they had other people evaluated that they may still maintain the registry?
No,
that they would not. Okay.
they're saying that so many things have transpired, hurricanes, storms, remodels, without checking back with the registry, and the registry going out to authenticate the intrinsic value of these facilities. They're saying that there are probably a number of facilities that are called historic that aren't.
Right.
So if they had the Historic Register police, they'd be pulling everybody's historic registration.
I got you. Okay, that answers that then. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, can move on to informational reports.
We have 5D.
Oh, I didn't download the new one. That's right, this is the one you had. It's 5D.
Introduce and ask to be read by title only.
Sorry. Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Leesburg, Florida, approving the Leesburg Resource Center use agreement between Lake Technical College and the City of Leesburg and providing an effective date.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? So I had one issue with the contract, and that is, I believe, since I downloaded the old version, I believe it's number 6, which allows them to build a house. I'm okay with the idea of, at some point, them building a house. I think it's good, it's training and stuff, but I'd like to see that pulled from this agreement, and if we get down that road, I think we need a little more input on what they would build, where they would build, how that whole program would work, more than just that one paragraph.
And and if you pull that, we can approve the agreement, and we'll just go back and we'll clarify that with Dr. Culpepper. The target with Lake Tech was to create 2 scenarios for job creation and job training. One was construction trades, and the other was the culinary trades. And so the lease was set up so that they could use some facility for construction training, the coursework, is how you read a ruler, this kind of stuff. And then potentially set up a scenario where we have surplus lots that they could then take the school work and go out into the field and do training work. So I think if we just take that one paragraph out, we can go back and figure out how we do the application out in the field at another time.
I just would like to see that actually come to the commission and not just be approved entirely at a staff level. I'm all in favor of the construction program. I think it's a great idea.
I'll make that motion to strike number 6. Second.
Okay, discussion on the amendment. Discussion from the public. Roll call.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Mayor Roebuck?
Yes. Any discussion on the motion from the commission or the public? Roll call.
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Mayor Roebuck?
Yes. And now on to informational reports. Okay, I don't think we have any tonight. City attorney items.
Just a brief update on the stay and save in. We've secured a hearing date of May 7 on our motion for summary judgment, so I'll probably be coming to you at your first May meeting with a further update and probably, hopefully, requests for bidding instructions again.
So this is on the code enforcement lien?
Yes.
And what's the amount of our lien?
It'll be running about $35,000 by the time we get there.
Okay. City manager items?
Just a quick update on the villages. The villages are still petitioning to work, and they're doing their groundwork to get their own CUP, so that moves forward. Today we received actually finally the copy of the mineral appraisal report. I think the value of the minerals there were appraised at $51,000. So I think, Fred, you've got the set escrow, and that's now over with you, right?
Yes, I have to give notice, although it's perfunctory because we don't know where those people are. It was done in Chicago in the 1920s, but I have to give some published notice.
They're not my cousins.
Might have been.
So in essence, we continue to have positive things. We're really down to about 3 or 4 big things to finish off the deal: the CUP, the changing of the effluent, which we're actually working on as well. We call it the hanging Chad agreement, if you will. There's about 5 or 6 different kind of general governmental things we need to sew up. So Brian Hudson and I continue to work on that agreement, and we move forward. So that's all I have for you tonight.
Okay, roll call.
Public comments?
Oh, public comments. I'm trying to get through. Okay, public comments. Section reserved for members of the public to bring up matters of concern or opportunities for praise. Issues brought up will not be discussed in detail at this meeting. Issue will either be referred to the proper staff or be scheduled for consideration at a future city commission meeting. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Any discussion from the public? I think we got.
Santa Henderson again. Just real quick. I'm going to save you a little bit of money, maybe, and say not to build a kayak thing at Henderson Park. A kayak could be carried into the water if they want to, but, you know, there's so many alligators in Lake Griffin that I think of kayaks only about how far out of the water? You know, I can envision. So anyway, think about that, and think about if it's, you know, if it would be necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to go back to my my Georgia high school days. You've never canoed in the Okefenokee. There's you canoe, and there literally are dozens of gators around you as you're canoeing through them.
If
So
they went in on their own and not about the city ramp, this would be their fault.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, now we can move on to roll call.
Commissioner Bone?
yeah, on the 44127, the landscaping there is looking terrific. Hear a lot of good things, and it just totally looks different. And I told Al the other day, it almost looks like the state or us knew what we were doing when we did it, because it's a nice design there. But as we were looking at it the other day, it looks like to me that maybe safely you could do some crosswalks to get out to where the fountain is, just watching the traffic flow there. And so there's gonna be a nice fountain that's gonna say Leesburg, and my thought is that if there's a way we could figure out to do some crosswalk to get from like where Lucy Hose is now over to there, or some other way to get in front of that, people can take pictures or whatever, maybe have a little picnic area or something in there. But that's a thought. The other one has to do with code enforcement, and with with all the good things that we're doing and the money that we're spending, improvements in Phoenician Gardens, wherever, Resource Center. I took Al out the other day, and I didn't have time to download these pictures, but I could bring dozens and dozens of pictures as I drive through, particularly Beverly Shores, of some things that I think are just becoming unsightly, and it's the trailers, the work trailers, the open trailers, enclosed trailers, boat trailers that are in front yards there. People are, I think, obviously running businesses out of their homes there, and then there's open storage that's occurring in the yards, in the carports, it seems like a petty thing to bring up something like that. And yeah, if you got somebody here and there that maybe's left their trailer out for a little bit, I mean, that's one thing. But I don't know, Ms. Henderson, if you've noticed, but as I drive through there, particularly when it's like I'm gonna go take a picture of this house or that house that I see all the time, and I started driving around, I was like, wow, look at them all, and so I think that really detracts from the community. It hurts the property values. People are trying to sell houses literally across the street from some of these things that are going on, and it just seems to be getting more and more. And one house particularly has, at any one time, they can have 4 trailers in their yard in a little 1,000 square foot house, and there's 4 work trailers. And one of them now has a little Toyota pickup truck on top of it too. So it's just continuing to grow. In the open storage, there are canopies that people are putting the canvas canopies in the front yard as carports as well. And I went through the code real quickly, and I think there are just numerous code violations that are occurring. It's the sheds and the setbacks and other things too. And if we're going to enforce codes, I think we need to enforce them across the board, and not and I think with all the money we're spending, that we do a disservice to not focus on this, because we want to see our property values go up. And so while over here we're spending a lot of money to help property values go up, we've got holes in the boat on and code enforcement that we're not plugging, and so the water, we're just continuing to drain and flood over in that area. So I would just ask if we could address that. I think it's important that we do it. I hate to even bring it up, but honestly, I think it's serious enough to the community that we need to address it. I'd ask that we do that.
I've got a meeting with staff tomorrow to talk about that.
Politely get people. I mean, I hate to tell people to move their trailers, but it's just. That's all.
I mean, if you're going to do that, if you don't mind, I'll just interject my thoughts on that before we have a discussion. I mean, I understand that, and obviously I have fought for the last couple of years with code enforcement to be able to do things with, excuse me, such as the thrift stores and all that stuff. But I think for me, I just want us to be careful. And when I say this, I mean, we've been trying really hard to bring people into Leesburg. Agreed? And so, we're talking about a neighborhood that's a established neighborhood, that's a nice neighborhood, probably most of those people have lived there for some time. And I think that if somebody wants to live in a gated community that's got a HOA that runs it really hard, they'll move there. But I don't want us to get to the point where the city's acting like an HOA, and then now people start, well, I don't want to live there because you can't put your, you buy a $50,000 boat and you can't park it outside, So I'm just, if we do start doing this, I would err on the side of caution, because, I mean, we've have enough negativity as it is, and if you have,
But I'm sorry, this is coming from people that live in a neighborhood of houses that unfortunately are maybe assessed out at $80,000, so a $50,000 boat in their front yard is actually, it's more than half what their cost of their house is, and I think you live on many acres out there, and which can absorb a big boat. I'm talking about neighborhoods with small lots, 1,000, 1,500 square foot homes, and they've got boats and work trailers. This isn't asking to go create codes. These codes exist here in Leesburg. They exist throughout Florida. Any city that's updated their codes since 1980 has the same codes that we have in ours. And to run a business, it's okay to have a home occupation, and our code allows a home occupation. But that home occupation, generally, you're not supposed to be able to tell that somebody is running a business from their home. That's a general overview. And when you have sheds with air conditioner parts spewing out of them, and you have air conditioner trailers out there with the name of the business on it, and extra trailers out there, in a small 1,200 square foot lot or house on a small lot, that's not, people aren't going to be moving. You're going to have people moving there that are okay with living with that and are going to pay $60,000 for a house, instead of letting that same house that's the same house that's in Winter Park that you're going to pay $250,000 for. And so I drove through Winter Park the other day. I've never driven down this, I think, Bumby all the way through, and I'm looking and I'm like, these houses are the same houses that are in Leesburg. But the difference is there's no trailers in front of them. There's no sheds in the setbacks. There's no businesses that are obviously being run out of them. And all I'm saying is we can just clean it up. As far as people running businesses, or they outgrow their house, that's, in my opinion, I think that's a natural part of the rollover of your city as well. So if you have a 1,200 square foot house on a small lot, and all of a sudden you've outgrown that house, well, you go get a different house and you upgrade your house, you sell that house so another family can come in and start. If you started a business and it's become successful enough that you need to have a trailer or 2 trailers or 3 trailers, then you need to go find a commercial lot somewhere, and I'm sure they're out there, where you can go park your trailer at night, and you get up a half hour earlier and you go pick your trailer up, you drop it off before you go home, and you get home a half hour later, and you do that. You don't have to do it from home.
No, and I agree. What I was saying was I just want us to approach this caution, and I was referring to more like if a guy has a boat, I'm just saying I want us to go into this, with caution.
I think we should give them options and say, look, this is where, if we go in there and say, look, this is where you can go, so they already know, and make it as easy as possible for them as we can. I mean, there's places they can go store their boats, and
well, maybe we could do like, you made that proposal on Main Street. We just put fences around their front yards.
Well, I think we're just talking about enforcing our existing code right now. I know where you're going with this, and we can have another code enforcement workshop.
But I agree.
Yeah. Like you said, we're going to do it politely.
Yeah.
Politely.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start handing out fines with no notice, and
But I do agree.
Yes. Anything else?
No. Oh, for me, no.
Okay.
No.
Commissioner Christian?
Well, I was trying to bite my lip on code enforcement, but we've already set the precedent that we don't reduce liens. So whenever we start the lien process, they're going to pay, because we're going to make sure that we don't reduce their liens as we did with Mr. Jones. So I'm with Commissioner Hurley. We do need to tread carefully, but I do hear Commissioner Bone, because I was on Facebook the other day, and I think in Atkins Loop near the Overlook, someone had a big trailer in the middle of the road, and the residents who were complaining about dangerous coming around that corner. So I think every neighborhood is going to need to be addressed, because you're going to have that where people do bring their work trailers home, and most neighborhoods, whether the homeowner association or not, they don't provide that lot over there where you can park your trailer. So they usually put them in the yard, and it does create not just a nuisance site-wise, but also a safety hazard. And the last thing we want is a kid to be walking or running the road or in the sidewalk and get hit by somebody trying to avoid a work trailer. So code enforcement has always been a sticky thing, and we have to just be careful on how we proceed. But we want a city that's going to be progressive, clean, and nice looking. So we're going to have to make sure we stick to the ordinances that are already in place, and you don't think have to create anything new, because I think we have enough work that we can do right now to clean our city up. I do want to commend Al and his staff working with the Resource Center, especially Ken Thomas and Mike Thornton, for working hard, reducing costs, finding ways to save money on the project, and I'm excited about a new opportunity. I think we talk about a complete city. I think the Resource Center plugs the hole in our ship that we kind of miss on numerous cases. We talk about our schools, talk about our families and our students. I think the Resource Center is going to kind of help fill some of those holes that I think our city kind of misses sometimes. So I want to commend our staff on a job well done. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Hurley.
Yeah, I want to just say congratulations to the PD. I think that's awesome. That I'm not sure how old the police department is now, but for a 60-man department, something like that, to reach the accreditation and to reach it with the level at which they did, I just think it speaks highly of the professionalism of the men and women of our police department, and I'm proud of them. You know, we had some unfortunate incidents happen over the weekend, but we've got a lot of great things that are taking place, so I'm excited about the momentum that we got, and I hope that, you know, we can come to some resolutions with some of the other issues facing us with Milt Moore's house and things of that nature. So just looking forward to the future. That's all I got.
Commissioner Dennison.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to congratulate the police department for their accreditation. I've always felt that our police department is one of our shining jewels in there with Venetian gardens and everything else. But it's a great police department, and I am so proud of what they are accomplishing. So please, my congratulations to every man and woman that work for us and put their life out for us every day. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Mayor Roebuck.
So I attended and sat through the entire code enforcement meeting. They make our meetings seem really short, but I will say that they're taking a hard line on everyone. There was a $74,000 fine, a $33,000 fine, and I mean they're you know really taking a stand there. So
what time did you get out?
8:30.
Oh.
8:30 starts at 5. So yeah, they're long. But anyways, and then this is something I brought up and sent Fred and Al a couple months ago. Panhandling ordinance in Orlando. You talked about a crosswalk out to the thing. I think that's great, but we need to have an ordinance. And the one in Orlando, it prohibits you asking for money from cars. So I could see that. You know, we have this nice big thing out there. What we don't want is people standing there trying to get money from cars. It's a safety hazard too there, and it also would allow us to set up some, I think, zones and areas where you wouldn't be allowed to sleep, because that's becoming a problem. You can't just say you can't ban camping. I found out entirely, but you can say you can't sleep, you know, in front of this business. So I'd like to see that hopefully very soon.
We have a couple of revisions. We'll get those to you.
Then Bike Fest. Bike Fest is coming up. You know, last year we pretty much had to bail out the partnership after Bike Fest, and with a large amount of money, and kind of talking to them, and they did not. I came to them and said, look, what's going on? You know, well, bad weather. I think what's really going on is 2 years ago they lost Gator Harley in terms of the vendors and the alcohol, $70,000 a year, and we wrote them a check for like 50. So the math's there. And what I think we need to address is that if you want to set up your own, you know, if I wanted to sell T-shirts at Romac, I would have to pay a vendor fee to help recoup the costs that the city and the partnership spend marketing that event. And I can sell lumber, because that's what I do every day, but I can't do other stuff. Well, that only applies to a very specific district. Gator Harley is not in that district. They are the biggest beneficiaries of Bike Fest, and they aren't really contributing to Bike Fest anymore. They give, I think, $10,000 or $15,000. And I say them because that's the biggest one, but I think we need to really look at expanding that zone to encompass all these people that are popping up doing things that they don't do during Bike Fest. I didn't mind until we started having to put in taxpayer money to subsidize the event. And my thoughts are one or two ways. Either we do nothing, but then don't come back and ask for more money, or we need to look at expanding that vendor and making sure that everyone contributes to the event.
So you're saying to expand it down Main Street, the zone, or are you just doing something citywide? Citywide. Can't you do some like temporary sales ordinance? Do we have one of those, a temporary sales ordinance? So that is and we have that already.
Yes.
I mean, so obviously I don't care that they sell motorcycles, but selling beer and all these other vendors they bring in, they're getting paid to do that.
Right. So just to review, and I don't remember what the number is. Dan, do you know how much was that? It's like X dollars a square foot.
Approximately $2.30 to 40 cents a square foot. If I
so essentially, the way the ordinance that you implement every year, and I call it the party zone. Okay. So you cut out a zone. I think we haven't approved it yet this year, have we?
That's correct.
We have not. We'll be bringing that to you. So if you want to go in this direction, the modification would be to change the zone. Essentially, the zone is Magnolia to Meadow, 9th to Canal-ish, something like that. And anybody who does a non-normal business has to pay the $2 per square foot fee. We collect that, and then that money goes to the partnership. That's how the transaction works. Generally, we don't have that issue. There's a business or two that generally will pop up that will say, that has an issue, but we've interpreted that their operations are generally in line with what they can do or what they're zoned to do. So I think what Mayor Roebuck is asking for is us to take that zone that's just the downtown and overlay the whole city so that we encompass everybody who profits from Bike Fest that would do a business activity that is not normally their business. And then that square footage pay would then be paid to the partnership, and I think where you're angling is then that payment would alleviate the city from having to bail out the partnership.
Yeah.
Well, let me add another layer on that, and I think that's heading in the right track, sort of, because I do put value in the partnership, and the Bike Fest is their significant moneymaker for them to do the things they do, which I think benefit us as a city. I would like to see us recognize what the real relationship is here, is that the partnership provides a service to the community, but also to our city government that normally a city would be paying a department to do, and not your recreation department, but a redevelopment agency or a downtown agency of some sort. And so, and that they have significant budgets to do that. And they put on events. They do the markets. They do the the Christmas strolls, the parades, the other things, and they do all these events. And so, as a city, we would have that in our budget to be paying probably a couple $100,000 a year to do those things, or more, And when you start putting in benefits and everything else, I mean, it starts adding up. And so I think we should recognize the partnership, that they're doing for us what a normal department would be doing for a city. We determine a fair compensation for that, and we contract with the partnership to pay them to do that. Then when we do that, if we take that approach and we consider a fair compensation based on what other cities are paying their own departments at a better deal, and which is still going to be a significant payment to the partnership probably. Then when we do that, if we go and we're charging for a temporary use permit, they don't pay the partnership, they pay the city of Leesburg for that, and for that temporary permit, because it's an occupational license for some sort of a temporary permit, and I don't know if that would work.
I think that's great.
But I would rather them pay the city than to pay the partnership, and we pay the partnership for the services that they're providing. Yeah. And then you're taking out the partnership out of the. You way down the street 2 miles from downtown, you've got to pay the partnership a fee.
Right.
So you're paying the city of Leesburg.
And we had a hard time collecting. I don't think nobody paid us. Yeah, I don't think nobody paid us.
And
well,
frankly,
that goes back to the citation thing.
It's already not prohibited, but we have never enforced it. We've just turned a blind eye to it. So the answer, I mean, it's, in my view, it's, well, you're not really legally, what you're doing has been illegal the entire time. And now we're saying pay some money, but I really like your idea. I mean, I think that's.
And I think that maybe with Al, maybe should look at what other cities charge their departments. Like Tavares probably charges a couple $100,000. The other cities, I think when the community says, "Oh, you guys giving the partnership $50,000," that's really a big discount because you're not paying for benefits. And they are doing the Christmas parade, they're doing the Christmas stroll, they're doing the bike fest that brings a lot of people to our city. So, and we did it ourselves. Well, they're coming to us and say, we need not just the benefits, but we need $50,000 to pay for this band to come. We need $100,000 for marketing. So I think we have to really look at what value the partnership brings to the city and the relationship that they have with the city. So I think that'll kind of give us a clear head. So we're just not giving away $50,000. We're actually paying for a service that they provide to the city. So maybe Al, you can maybe look around what other cities pay for their special events department, and so we can kind of see what we're actually saving and the benefit that it does. So we won't even have this discussion. It'll be easy. It'll be easy for the mayor to say, yeah, I can write this $50,000 check for $500,000.
Because right now we have no idea, what's going to happen,
But I think it's going to be hard if we do citywide policing. To say during a major event when the police is all downtown, Gator Harley, they benefit drastically. I mean, they make a lot of money. But the guy down the road in Oklahoma who got a 10 by 10 tent, or it was in city limits Leesburg, are we going to send the police down and say, hey, go tell that guy to give us $50 for setting a tent up? So, but I think maybe that's what staff talks to Gator Harley directly and say, hey, you guys doing this event. You're the biggest recipient of this, because I mean, I've been here. I've had the attorneys come up and say we're gonna sue you guys for making us pay because we went and got a fire system. We should be able to sell beer because we got a occupational license. So I mean, every year it's been this big. Fred, you probably been on the other side of that. Every year, if something changes, we have people to get permits to park motorcycles. I mean, on their property. We've been through this trying to get that kind of balancing. So, but I think we can get a amount that shows the value. We can say, yeah, they do bring value. I think that alleviate a lot of.
Frankly, I think that part of the deal is I think a lot of this. I mean, don't forget, Bike Week started with Gator back in the day, and I don't know what the relationship between the two of them has become to where they're at today, but I kind of feel like both of them kind of need to bring themselves to the table and figure out a way to work it out.
Absolutely.
Between them, as opposed to the city as much, if we can stay out of it, because Gator, everything Gator does, they really do all year long. I mean, they have events all the time with bands. They do a Sunday deal where they have beer and barbecue, and they always have vendors all year long for different events. They sell T-shirts all year. So I don't know where we would, I don't know, but I just think that for 20 years they worked together. And now whatever's come about,
but it's become our problem. That's the only reason I care. It's our problem.
I don't know. Maybe
I'm with you. They should just work it out.
Yeah, I'll be referee, man.
Well, I'll reach out to him.
Yeah, okay. And that's why I wanted to bring this up in plenty of time, because I would not want to just at the last minute,
bam, do
a big change that affects people.
I'll reach out to him.
All right, and then on a positive note, the economic restructuring committee with the partnership met and had a developer come in, and they've already, I guess, applied for permits, and 90 days going to be starting on a $150 million project across from Dabney.
Yes,
it's going to be 6 medical offices, a Marriott Place or Marriott Suites. It's the second highest one that Marriott does, like 100-something bed hotel. 400-bed memory care assisted living, and then 224 apartments, but they're quite high end.
Where is that?
Right across from Dabney.
Dan, you signed up on apartments.
Well, that was before me. The commission approved those, so yeah. But they're nice. So anyway, so that was some good positive news. So anyways, that being said, meeting adjourned.
I tell wife to get someone another motel, she'll be happy.